Morning, everybody. My name is Andrew Feig, and I am Senior Program Director here at RCSA. Thank you for joining us for the Team Science Accelerator informational webinar. I have a couple pieces of housekeeping that I just wanted to do before we get started. The first is if anyone needs closed captioning, that's available through the webinar tools. So you can go to settings within Teams, language and speech, and then show live closed captioning if you wish to avail yourself of that. We are going to be recording the session. That's so that we can post it through RCSA's webpage and our YouTube channel. That will allow for asynchronous viewing. So if you have colleagues or team members who couldn't make it today, you can direct them to the recording. Stacy Piggott, RCSA's Communications Director, will be monitoring the question and answer. Please use the Q&A throughout the discussion. We're going to hold the questions to the end so that we can get through the core material. Stacy will aggregate those by topic, and as we get to the end, we will group them and address the questions by theme. So with that, once again, welcome. There are a lot of you here, and that's great to see. I'd like to introduce Eric Isaacs, RCSA's President and CEO. So Eric started his career at Bell Labs. He spent 15 years there as a condensed matter physicist. He later became director of Argonne National Laboratories and then served separately as provost and VPR at the University of Chicago. He is currently the president-elect of the AAAS and will be starting his term in January, and he's been here at RCSA for just over a year. So he has core beliefs in the fact that when researchers cross disciplinary boundaries and institutional lines, that this idea of team science can really accelerate science. And so I'd like to welcome Eric to this webinar.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. I'm Eric, as Andrew has said, and I'm really delighted that joined today by Andrew, who is our Senior Program Director, and he will lead this new effort. So he will spend time in the next few minutes talking more about how the program is going to work, the eligibility program elements, etc. But I really want to thank you all for joining us. We're very excited to connect with you and have a discussion about where we're going here at RCSA. So let me first start with a little bit about the Research Corporation for Science Advancement. We were founded back in 1912. We're headquartered in Tucson, and we are one of the oldest, if not the oldest, fully science-focused foundation in the country. Our mission has remained and will continue to remain, advancing early-stage scientists with high potential basic scientific ideas. We invest in faculty in the physical sciences and adjacent fields. We support innovative ideas. We promote interdisciplinary work, as Andrew has already indicated. We deeply believe in the integration between research and teaching and building the academic leaders for the future. You will likely know us, if you do, through our 3 core programs. We have the Cottrell Scholar Awards, which are early career tenure track faculty in chemistry, physics, astronomy, adjacent fields. We have our Scialog program, which catalyzes interdisciplinary collaborations, exciting ideas, new ideas around a specific theme that is chosen. And then we have the RCSA Fellows program, which supports postdocs as they transition to faculty positions. And now we're introducing the Team Science Accelerator. It's the newest edition, and it comes from studying, watching all 3 closely. So I came here just over a year ago, and we've been looking at trying something new. This is a pilot, and I just wanted to mention a little bit about what we've learned. So they're from 2 directions really at once. Internally, the Scialog program has been fantastic and will continue to be fully supported. But as we look carefully at Scialog, it's designed explicitly to catalyze collaboration, and most groups function very well, but really more as co-acting groups. And so we're going to talk more about the difference between co-acting and real team science. People who work exquisitely in parallel, they may not have quite the collective accountability for shared outcomes. And this is not a criticism at all. It is a default mode that's typically academic and how academics through tenure are incentivized to go. So few of us, including myself at Bell Labs, where I started, few of us are ever really taught what separates genuine working team, shared purpose, real accountability, disciplined decision-making from talented people who happen to share a room, happen to share some funding. So we believe and would want to impart this idea of real close collaboration and make that a full journey. The other thing, of course, which I'm sure all of you are aware of, is externally things are changing fast in science, physical sciences, all sciences, and many of the hard problems in particular, like climate resilience, advanced materials, new materials, quantum information science, physical foundations of biology, dark matter, many more, are not typically easy to yield to a single investigator alone. That's not to say single investigators aren't critically important and will continue to be, but it often will take a small, agile, focused interdisciplinary team that is capable of really becoming a joint effort and not a real core of capability, not just a nice to have thing that I think many agencies have focused on. The other thing, of course, in agencies is that funding is shifting, and we want to make sure that our awardees have the ability to shift, to at least know how to shift if they want to, toward more coordinated, milestone-driven work outcomes. Of course, AI and advanced computation, I don't have to talk a lot about that now, are letting, and will likely even more so, let small teams now attempt, once required, a large team, centers. Federal agencies are also deliberately building team science mechanisms into their initiatives, science initiatives. So together, these forces for us really create an urgency. And what we want to put here is an ability for faculty to learn to become genuine or build genuine working teams that will last for their careers at an early. We're looking to train at an early stage or incentivize an early stage so that you're best positioned for the next decade of funding in science. So that's really the gap that our Team Science Accelerator is attempting to close. It's not a grant with a team requirement bolted on. It's really meant to give early and mid-career faculty the know-how with lived experience to form and lead an effective team. On a problem of your choosing, of your own choosing, with the support of structures, the team science literature says teams actually need to succeed. And you'll hear a lot more about that from Andrew in the next couple of minutes. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Andrew now, and he'll walk through the program, some of the expectations, and timing. So Andrew, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. And so as Eric mentioned, this program has really come out of a year of strategic planning, looking at the landscape of where science is and where it is going, and thinking about how RCSA can use its resources to best serve all of you, our stakeholders. Okay, so Eric introduced RCSA. Now we're going to talk a little bit about what is team science and why does RCSA care about it, and then we'll talk about the program that we have designed in particular. So I want to stress team science isn't new. So in a 2025 National Academies report, they defined team science as collaborative independent research conducted by more than one individual, often involving integrating scientific approaches to solve problems that are multifaceted, multidimensional, interdependent, and do not have a single answer. RCSA would add to that to be effective, team science also must involve the adoption of critical team behaviors. So that means establishing common North Star goals across the entire team, setting up norms for communication and decision-making, adopting mechanisms to ensure the psychological safety in meetings so that people can speak the truth that they see and really help drive the science to its best. And then, of course, shared accountability for the outcomes. And this is one of the big differences between team science and simple collaborations. So as I said, team science isn't new. There was a National Academies report from 2015 looking at 10 years of team science prior to the 2015 report. And both reports have described both the strengths as well as many of the difficulties of team science. And the team science grew out of calls for interdisciplinary research and the recognition that the wicked problems that we're seeing around society that science can help tackle often requires real interdisciplinary teams and effective team practices. I'll note that Many of the federal agencies already have team science programs. So the CTSAs and RM1s, formerly P01 and P50 programs. NSF has the CCIs, the MRSECs, the I-Core, the NSF engines, the new quantum virtual labs. DOE has had the Energy Frontier Research Centers, the ARPA-E, and now the new Genesis mission. And what we did as part of our assessment of where is team science is we read a lot of the literature coming out of these kinds of programs. And I think the CTSAs are an example of them. They have studied themselves as well as they could. And the goal from all of these federal programs that did team science was that the sum of the parts would be far greater than the individual grants. And so the idea that if you take the same piece of money to a CCI that you would have given to 5 individual investigators, you might get 10 or 20-fold the productivity out of them, and that you'd have this multiplier effect. As we looked at spot checking grants, whether they were EFRCs or MRSECs or any of the other team science programs, what we found isn't that there wasn't great science that came out. There was, but the multiplier effect wasn't there. And that by and large, as we looked at these programs, they still functioned as traditional collaborations. The cost per unit publication, we can argue whether or not cost is the right measure of impact. But in fact, in an MRSEC grant, we find that the same investigators that we looked at were now costing 4 times per unit publication what they did immediately prior to receiving the grant. So from their prior grant to the group grant, the cost of the science went up. And so they didn't get extra productivity. Maybe they got better papers, that's objective. But what they didn't see is the multiplier effect that we had hoped and the federal government had hoped that they would see. And so that's sort of where we're going, what we're thinking about. Why aren't these kinds of programs reaching the impact that was laid out for them? So as we mentioned, the current problems, and Eric listed many of the ones listed here, and this is not meant to be directive on where we want to see awards. These are exemplary problems that might be things that you work on. But the idea of climate resilience and advanced materials and quantum sensing, these are all things that no single lab is likely to solve alone, and that you really need teams to focus crossing the disciplinary boundaries to provide the input from what is traditionally very relatively disciplinary siloed training and siloed departments on campuses. And so what we want to do is think about working with all of you to think about what it is that is necessary to learn to shift our mindsets and to lead effective teams in the way that team science is meant to be run. So here's a continuum of collaborative structures. This comes from J.R. Hackman's book, Collaborative Intelligence. And so at one end, you have people who are interested in the same topics. These are people you might see at a conference. You're all interested in RNA science, or you're all interested in new battery technology. And as you start working with each other, you might move up this collaborative ladder and thinking about whether you're really working in parallel or working in concert. And that's largely the difference that you can think about across this continuum. In Scialog, we bring people together around a topic. So you come in the door as part of a community of interest, and through the process of collaboration and the meeting structure itself, you probably get as far as the emergent collaboration stage just from the practices that we do at the meeting. Those of you who got grants or decided to work together, what we find is that you ultimately get to the stage of working, as Eric said, as a co-acting group, that you fundamentally have your individual silos, you work on them, you do great science, but you're still working fundamentally independently within your laboratories and not as an integrated group. And so the Team Science Accelerator is building on sort of that knowledge of what we've gleaned from watching 15 years of Scialog projects to ask, how can we push the science to go to that next level? What are the support structures that need to be built around it? What are the mind shifts required of those of you working on these projects? And how do we accelerate the adoption of effective teaming practices so that you actually become a true project team? And we're partly at fault for this, right? When we designed Scialog and we execute it, you get individual awards. That means that by the structure of the program, you are fundamentally already siloed, right? We have told you that you're siloed by giving individual awards. The other thing, you write individual reports as opposed to a single report representing the entire team. Once again, reinforcing the mindset that you are collaborators working on a common project, but you are fundamentally working in those silos. Okay, so if someone could mute themselves, it sounds like someone's running a microwave in the background. Okay, so what is RCSA's overarching hypothesis? Small interdisciplinary teams can produce breakthrough science and compete successfully for large federal awards at rates exceeding those of solo investigators if provided with the support structures that allow greater adoption of strong team-oriented leadership. That's not to say that we are going to help you define what that structure is. It's a question of you putting forth how your team will operate. And so there will be different team structures represented among the awardees as we envision it. So setting up teams for success. What do we expect teams need? Well, they need motivation to pursue a breakthrough scientific project, something with real interdisciplinarity, and it needs to be of your choosing. There needs to be that intrinsic motivation to pursue this science. This is on you as the applicants to decide what is the problem that you want to tackle. And so unlike with Scialog, where we set a topic on the table and people come to the topic, here you have free rein to choose any scientific project that you wish and bring the team together. You'll have to justify it, but we'll get to that in a minute. There has to be willingness to adopt disciplined goal setting and team leadership practices with shared accountability and shared decision-making. So once again, we're not going to tell you what that structure should be precisely. You have to put down on paper what your team expects. It can be highly vertical or it can be highly flat, but it's up to you to put on paper what that structure will look like. And then understanding the skills and tools necessary to do the work in today's world. You are free to deploy AI and computational tools as you wish if they are appropriate for the work that you are doing, but they're not required. But you should be thinking about how AI might assist in the teaming structures as well. And so other ways that AI not just deployed to the scientific needs, but also to help manage the demands of working as a team, if those are appropriate as well. So why now? Because the physical sciences are changing rapidly, both through political changes, funding changes, and technological changes. And we need to be ready for these changes. Some of these are from the administration, others are not, but the changes are coming regardless. And we want you to be able to succeed to the best of your abilities. So we have years of grant-making experience through Scialog, Control Scholars, and the Fellows Program, and experience working with early and mid-career researchers. We want to build on that and enhance the strengths of those existing programs while launching this team science program as well. We have a fair amount of agility coming from the philanthropic side, and so we can adapt in real time as we experiment with these structures. Part of this, as we put out as a hypothesis, is an experiment. What is it that will make you successful? And we will be looking at that internally, and we'll be making real-time changes so that we can produce the best science through you as possible. And of course, the willingness to share our findings and to achieve scalable results. And so we'll be talking both with the federal agencies as well as other philanthropies to share what we learn from this process so that it's not just internal to RCSA, but part of the ecosystem of basic science research that we are working within. Okay, so we have set metrics for ourselves. We've set metrics for you. The fact that there are 275 of you here in the room today says that there is interest and potential participation. So we hope to see your applications at the LOI stage. We want to see you develop as teams and develop the leadership skills necessary to work both as leaders of those teams and within those teams. Science is king, or queen. We want the science and the impact of the science to be stellar. And so we want to be watching for the hallmarks of good science, but we recognize that the scientific impact of some grant that we make may come 5 or 10 years from now. And so we can't just be looking at impact level assessments. We have to be looking at those early hallmarks and the fact that you're making progress towards those hallmarks. And then we want to validate this model that providing external assessment, external processes to help you develop as teams will lead to strength of those teams. And so we're using external evaluation of the program, not just internal evaluation. So those are the metrics for us. What are we asking you to do? First and foremost, we want you to do great science and to have impact. But once again, that may take time to develop. And so we're not going to be measuring your impact at the 2-year point. We're going to be measuring the advance towards that impact. We do expect people to adopt team behaviors. And so we want you to stipulate what your team norms will be, and we want you to follow them. We'll be looking at publications and data sets and follow-on support, and that will be an automated process beyond the scope of the grant so that we can follow the impact over time. And importantly, community building. This is meant to be a scaling process where each of you who becomes funded or comes and is a finalist is learning about these processes, brings that learning to your peers, is willing to learn from your peers and from the group as a whole, and then share those effective practices back to your departments, back to your universities, and to the communities in which you work. And so if we only work with 4 teams of 5, that's 20 people. That doesn't push through the community very fast or very effectively. And so we want you to bring this back as ambassadors to this way of science if it's working. Okay, program elements. A lot of this is on the website, so I'm going to walk through it relatively quickly, but there's going to be pre-work for those of you selected as finalists. From the time we name you as finalists in February to the meeting that happens in June, you're going to be finishing and having a penultimate draft of your grant materials, and you're going to be working up all of the collaborative structures required, especially if you cross institutional boundaries. Deep integrated teams, for instance, will have data sharing policies. This means that you're going to have ways of dealing with IP structures and the fact that the work that you collect is shared by the entire group. It is not, I collaborate, I have data from my students within my laboratory, and I put a selection of that into the pot for the team to work on. If you are working in a fully integrated team, the entire team owns the entire collection of data. And so we really want to think about what are the structures. This is not what your university is used to. You're going to need MTAs, materials transfer agreements if necessary. You're going to need AI use agreements, IP agreements. Depending on the science that you are putting forth, we want all of this pre-designated before you come to the workshop in June. And so we'll be working with the finalists teams to have whatever institutional structures are necessary for you to work as an integrated team on day 1 if you're funded. There's going to be a workshop in June. The dates are posted already. The workshop is going to be roughly 50-50 divided on the social science of highly effective teams. We will have team coaches. They are on site helping you to develop and work through the design of your team charters. The other half of the workshop is going to be thinking about the scientific aims. You'll have thought about them for months by then, but finalizing the actual proposal and putting that forth so that most of that's just final refinement at the meeting. So the due date for the submitted paperwork is going to be following very, very fast onto that workshop. And then finally, how do you present this? How do you think about pitching science when the people in the room may represent a team of astronomers and a team of dark matter physicists and a team of quantum information scientists and a team of chemists or any other field? Each of the finalists are likely going to represent highly disparate fields, and you're going to be expected to work with them on the nature of team science and teaming, but also be able to represent your discipline and explain why your problem is critical and should be funded. And so the presentations and the pitches will deal both with the science, explaining to everybody in the room, outside of your field and in, as well as why the structures that you have developed are appropriate for the strength of your team and the work that you're going to do. We'll have disciplinary specialists on site that you can interact with who have led scientific teams in your fields. And then, as I said, we have professional coaches that we have engaged, and you will have team coaching provided to the entire team in a 6 months engagement at the start of the project, so that they will help you adopt the structures and the mindsets required for effective teaming behaviors. And then finally, there'll be accountability check-ins. So this is very different from any of our other grants. This is going to be a high-touch program throughout the 2 years of the award. And it's not just we are writing a check and there you go off to do the work inside your laboratories. So we'll actually be engaged with you throughout the program. Okay, eligibility. And I have some case studies to show eligibility graphically in just a moment. But each individual has to meet each of these criteria. So you have to have a position that it allows you to be an independent scientist. We don't care where that is. It can be a university, it can be a national lab, it can be a non-academic research institute. It has to be in the US and Canada because RCSA is limited to funding in the US and Canada. And you have to have the access and resources and facilities necessary for the project. That includes the ability to accept a grant from us. And so there are requirements of the type of institution in order to be able to accept an award. All team members must be within 10 years of their first independent position on the date of LOI submission. In other words, their first independent position can have started no later than November 9th, 2016 this year. Next year, it'll be 2017. We'll walk through specific case studies of what that means in a moment. I've been getting a fair number of questions on that topic already by email. Any individual may apply as part of only a single team. So you cannot be part of multiple teams. You need a track record of excellence and a clear contribution to the skill sets essential for team success. And we're looking for the willingness to share openly and learn from your peers. Okay, so let's look at a couple case studies. First one is a very straight and linear path. PhD student, took a postdoc, then became an assistant professor in July 2017, and they were promoted at some point in 2024 to become an associate professor. You note that the first independent position is within the 10-year window, so this person is eligible. We do not look at your current rank, we look at when you started your first independent position. Case study 2, slightly different in that they were a PhD student, then they took a postdoctoral position at a company. I'm calling it XYZ Biotech, but it could be Merck, it could be any company that you wish. They then moved from that postdoctoral position to become an assistant professor. They were later promoted. This is very similar to the first case. Once again, the first independent position is within the 10-year window. This individual is eligible. Okay, here's a slightly different case. PhD student, finished their PhD in 2012. They started at a research scientist job at the same biotech company in 2013. Based on their title, this is an independent position. This is not a postdoctoral position. This person will have counted as starting their independence in 2013. They later moved to a PUI, became an associate professor as well. But this person is not eligible in that their first independent position was more than 10 years ago. You could substitute research scientist, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab or Argonne National Lab, based on the title of assistant scientist, staff scientist. That is not a postdoctoral position in the lab structures, ergo, their clock started when they started that position. Finally, fourth case study. This is what we may call a 0th year person. We'll see this in a second. They are currently a postdoc. They have accepted a new position as of the date of LOI submission, but they have not yet started that position. But they will have started that position prior to the launch of the grant. This person is eligible as long as they have started the position prior to the go date of the award. So while they are eligible, I will point out the other individual condition was you have to be ready and able to do the project on day one. If you're starting your position in August of 2027, your lab, depending on the type of science you do, may or may not be fully established and set up by September 15th. So think about whether or not this is appropriate to apply this year or not. You are eligible to apply, but it may not be in your best interests to apply this year. You might consider applying next year to the program. If you have a long enough lead time that your lab is fully established, that's fine. But do think about this, because we don't want any members to inhibit the ability of the team to function on day one. We can talk more about individual eligibility in the Q&A at the end, but hopefully these set relatively good groundworks for what is and is not eligible. Okay, the second step is team criteria. And so first and foremost, all PIs and co-PIs must meet the individual eligibility requirements we just stipulated. You should have a complementary interdisciplinary team of 3 to 5 investigators. Investigators can be at one institution or many institutions. There are no limits to the number of teams or team members that any single institution can put forward. So this is not a limited submission at the institutional level. Okay, number 5 is probably the one that a lot of people are thinking about. You need to be proposing work toward a problem in the basic physical sciences and their adjacent fields or subdisciplines, including but not limited to chemistry, including chemistry and biochemical biology, physics, including biophysics and astrophysics, material science, including quantum science, magnetic materials, advanced energy solutions, etc., earth and planetary sciences, and astronomy. The core here, while people can propose things that are biology adjacent and you need to be cognizant and thinking about the impact on the physical sciences. And so if it's purely something, a project looking at the ecology of an organism without bringing that back to the physical sciences, that's likely not going to fare well as we review. Okay, be bold, but be achievable. So we do want you to tackle big problems, and we want you to recognize that this is a starter grant to get you to where you need to be competing for larger awards. We're not going to expect that a $1 million 2-year grant to 3 to 5 of you is going to solve the problem of climate change. People have been working on it for decades, but it will position you to do something really novel in that space if that's the problem you're looking towards. You need to communicate your proposed governance structure effectively. Once again, this is in the LOI. You're going to have a one-page document talking about your governance structure. You will refine that if you make it to the finalist stage and actually write a team charter. And then, once again, strong orientation toward the cohort, the willingness to share your experiences, and the willingness to learn from your peers. So that's the team eligibility. Okay, now I'm going to switch gears and we're going to talk about what's actually in the LOI, the letter of intent. So if you have logged into PRISM, our grant management system, and opened the application, which is available to you, this is what you would see. You're going to have a free text section called a science impact statement, maximum of 200 words. Think of this as a detailed abstract, but needs to go a little bit beyond that, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. You're going to have an AI use statement. Once again, AI is not required, but you want to state if you are using it, say so. If you're not using it, why it might be inappropriate to use it. But we live in a world that talks a lot about this, and so is it or is it? We want you to put out on the table. You're thinking about, is it or is it not appropriate, and where is it going to be important or not in your work. The actual LOI. This is going to be a PDF, 2 pages. And so this is the core. We'll talk about what needs to be in the actual LOI in just a moment. You're going to have a team governance statement. This is a 1-page draft of what you envision, but then it will get modified and refined at the workshop in June if you make it to the finalist stage. We're going to need NIH, NSF, or CCV format biosketches. Americans may not know the CCV format. That's for the Canadian standard format. We'd like you to merge all of the individual PIs and co-PIs into a single document so that there's one upload here. We're going to ask for your current and pending support in NSF format. Feel free to use the Science CV tools to do that. And once again, merge that into a single document representing all of the PIs and co-PIs with the names of the PI and co-PI at the top so that we know whose support this is. And then we recognize that there are people who have had extenuating circumstances, and so there is a clock extension statement that is optional. If you are requesting a variance against the 10-year requirement because of severe illness or family responsibilities of some kind, there is the opportunity to tell us why you think that an extension is appropriate. So those are the documents you'll need when you get into the application materials for the LOI. The science impact statement, I'm going to walk through I'm not going to walk through all of these, but there are a couple that are particularly important. This is a statement that needs to wow the readers. This is, if you were wildly successful, this is what will happen to the field of science we're targeting. What are the implications of the successful completion of this project? Think big, be bold. We want great science. Remember that this award is catalytic. We want you to have a vision of where you're going, and show early hallmarks of success that you're getting there. But once again, we don't expect you to complete that entire vision within 2 years and with only $1 million. Finally, in this statement, we do not want any identifiable information regarding the team or the institutions at which you work. That's because this statement is going to be read entirely blind. And so this will get sent back to you if there's any identifiable information within the science impact statement. The letter of intent itself, we want you to address 4 specific questions in the letter of intent. What is the scientific challenge the team is addressing, and why is it important? What will it take to solve that challenge? Why is it critical to overcome this challenge now? And why does this team represent the right collection of interdisciplinary people and scientists and skills to meet that challenge? If you notice and go back through this presentation, you'll see that I have answered those 4 same questions within this webinar. Why we're doing this project. This is the core that you need to address as you put forth your letter of intent. That's just good grantsmanship, by the way. All of your proposals, no matter what agency you send them to, should be answering those 4 questions. Okay, finally, LOI is due November 9th. The first pass, as I said, of the LOI will be done blind to individuals and institutions and is simply asking, is the problem at the top of the pool? Is it sufficiently important that we want to read the entire letter of intent documentation? Those that pass that first test will get a full LOI review. Now we know the team, we know your backgrounds, we read the full proposal, and this will allow us to then get to 8 to 10 finalist teams, and we'll name those teams in February. All team members should please hold the dates June 21 to 23 when we will have the in-person meeting in Tucson. We need everyone there to work as a team, and we are not running this as a hybrid meeting. So we need all PIs and co-PIs to be ready to be at the meeting in June. Immediately following that meeting, within a week or so, all of the finalized grant materials will be submitted. And so obviously you're not writing the grant in that last week. You're actually preparing the final materials in advance of the June meeting and refining them at the June meeting. We will notify the finalists who actually receive the awards by August 1st with the intent that start of work will be mid-September. And so we want to be able to move very fast at the final stages here because we'll have seen you working together at the meeting. That's part of the review process, as well as the paperwork. We'll have heard your pitches. We'll know a lot about you by the time that we actually read the last finalist documents. Okay, future events. We'll have a second webinar from noon to 1 on 9/11. That's a Friday. That will largely be the same as the materials we discussed today. So if you have, as you aggregate and collect your team members, if they missed this meeting because this meeting came very quickly on the announcement, feel free to have them attend. Feel free to refer additional colleagues to the webinar if they were unable to make today's event, and recognize that we will also post the recording of today's event online. Okay, by late September, my guess is most of you will have your teams and your problems at least mostly worked out. So we will have 2 office hours to discuss actual LOI documents in greater detail, one on September 25th and another on October 19th. And that is a time where you can, we'll have much less structure to the meeting, but the plan will be to work with you through your questions with teams that have already assembled and are actively working on the LOI documents. So you feel free to use the QR code. This will take you to the Team Science Accelerator website to look at both the written materials, the FAQs, and register for future events. And of course, my email address is at the bottom here.